You work with a lot of clients and you're considered kind of their coach. So, how would you coach somebody to approach objection handling? Welcome to Maximize Business Value Podsnack, a bite sized version of the Maximize Business Value podcast, because sometimes you just don't have time for a full podcast meal.
Yeah, so I have a framework for that too. It's called EVO.
Why am I not
Um,
surprised, right?
yeah, so the EVO Objection Handling Framework, and EVO is an acronym. It's empathize, validate, offer. So I think the mistake that most people make when they objection handle is they do it in a way that really almost like offends the prospect. So like Tom, if you gave me an objection like, "Oh, I don't need sales training. I'm already working with Sandler." And I'm thinking to myself, well, hey, I could do a better job than these guys with prospecting. And I'm just using this as an example. I really like Sandler stuff. But if I made you feel like an idiot for using my competitor, you'd be like, dude, what's your problem, man? And that's how most people objection handle. It's like, so and so is like, oh, I'm using ABC competitor. Oh, interesting. I haven't really heard good things about them. Like, if you had to improve one thing about them, what would you improve? And it's like, it's really personal and it's really invasive. And what it makes the prospect feel like is like really misunderstood and just like kind of disrespected. So there's like this loop that we get into where prospect gives us an objection. We feel kind of bad and misunderstood about it. And they're like, why don't they see the value in us? Or someone says not interested. And you're like, how could you not be interested when I haven't even told you about my company yet? And it goes in this loop the other way too, where the prospects, you respond with this weird rebuttal and the prospect's thinking, is Jason even listening to me right now? Like, I already have a solution. So the way we can break that loop is with empathy. So what I need to do is instead of trying to like talk to you in logic, why it logically makes sense to do something else or do something differently, I need to actually engage you on an emotional level to disarm you and get you actually open. I could have all the best advice in the world, Tom, but if you're not in a mode where you want to actually take that advice, it doesn't matter. So we can use not interested as an example. So that's like more of like a shallow objection. So if someone says you call them in a cold call and they're like, hey, not interested, not right now, I'm busy, whatever it might be. What I'm going to talk to is what I think that they're feeling. So when someone says not interested, what they're probably thinking is, who is this person? Oh, God, another salesperson. Oh, God, I'm in the middle of something. I thought you were someone else. All of those things, right? So I'm going to empathize with you, and then I'm going to validate that. So that's what this might sound something like this. Tom says not interested. Oh, hey, Tom, sounds like I might have caught you in the middle of something. And if that's the case, I could totally understand why now might not be the best time to take a call. And immediately you're like, oh, okay. So he's actually acknowledging what I said. He's not trying to like rebuttal me or anything like that. And then the offer piece, so the O, and this is where you mentioned Sandler. They call it upfront contracts. I call it permission based, questions or permission based openers. Same kind of concept. So I could say, hey, sounds like I might have caught you in the middle of something, Tom. If that's the case, I could totally understand why now might not be the best time to take a call, but this might be a long shot. Like, would it hurt if I took like 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling and then you could let me know if you want to keep chatting or if this is even relevant for you? 8 or 9 times out of 10, and all the thousands of call recordings I've listened to, people do this like that. That typically works. The person's typically open to hearing. That's kind of the beauty behind it. So that's one way of doing it. If someone says we already have a vendor, that's probably a more common objection. We need to again think about the fact like why would this person be saying that and what are they thinking? Well, they're probably thinking I either hey, I really like the person that I'm working with and I don't want to betray them and I don't like even want to entertain another possibility, or two, it was a lot of work to like get this vendor involved and like last thing I want to do is disrupt that process. So let's just talk to that, empathize and validate. Hey Tom, sounds like you're already taken care of, and it sounds like you've put a lot of thought into like the system that you're using to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And the last thing I'm sure you want to do is like completely disrupt that. So I could totally understand if you're not looking into like new vendors right now. But hey, this might be a long shot. I'm actually working with a couple of your competitors, and what we're figuring out is how they're doing X, Y, and Z. Would it hurt if I shared some of those things with you, and then you could, maybe take that back to your team? And in worst case scenario, if you hear it and you're not interested, and you tell me to go bug off, and which I'm happy to do as well.
I love that. You give multiple times. I'm hearing several points of when you're describing what you're doing, giving them permission to say, "Hey, I don't have time for you right now.
Mhm.
And too many sales calls, they're pushing and they're trying to argue. But if I can tell you in my own experience, when people actually get me on the phone in that very same scenario, if they give me a chance, put me back in control of the conversation, I'm still going to give them an opportunity to sell me something, right?
Yeah. Well, you
So
bring up something so important, and this mental block that we have in sales is that we feel like we need to control the conversation. And we feel like if we give the prospect a choice to say yes or no, well, then they could say no, and that's bad. When the opposite is actually true, and this is another framework I call the 5 desires, but I'll just share that one is like a desire that everyone has is a desire for autonomy. So like when people feel like they have a choice, they're so much more likely to comply when they feel they're doing that out of their own will versus being forced to do it. So you actually want to give prospects choices. That doesn't mean that you sound um, like unconfident or inconfident, whatever the word is, like lack of confidence. I'm not saying, well, and then Tom, like maybe you could decide, because you probably don't want to talk to me, but maybe then you could decide if you want. You're not doing that. You're just giving them a choice.
that's a perfect opportunity, right? And um, as I used to, one of my mantras that I tell salespeople all the time is that people love to buy. People love to buy. They just hate to be sold.
Yep.
And if you let them control it, then by asking them good questions and allowing them to control the conversation, I think you've got a much better opportunity. I love your approach. Good. Are you hungry for more? Check out our next pod snack, or you can enjoy the value size Maximize Business Value podcast wherever you found this podcast.